The next lesson that we're going to look at is probably the most difficult lesson that we're going to cover in the course, and that includes self-acceptance, self-kindness, and self-love. And this is the most important thing that we can do for ourselves in our mindful dating project, and that's learning to be kinder to ourselves, learning to accept ourselves, and learning to love ourselves. And why is that important? Because when we love ourselves, we're not looking for something external to make us happy. We're not looking for somebody else to satisfy this need. So we can approach our relationships in a much more open way without expectations of the other. So how do we start to learn to love ourselves? The first step in that process is self-acceptance. Now, what's self-acceptance? It's acknowledging and accepting our perfectly imperfect self right now, here in this moment, without wanting to change ourselves. The first step is acceptance, and then we have transformation. So just for a moment, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to put your hand on your heart. And I want you to take a couple of inhales and exhales. And I want you to just acknowledge that you're an amazing person, that you have a lot to give, and that you always do your best. And now we'll come back together. How was that? Now, a lot of people in the courses that I teach find self-acceptance and self-love the most hardest thing to do. When we start off in life as children, we have no judgments of ourselves. We can run around and dance on the dance floor without feeling any inhibitions. We love life, we have a joy of life. But as we get older, we become more conditioned and a bit harsher towards ourselves, be it judgments from parents, from peers, being influenced by the media. So we become very harsh and judgmental on ourselves. And what we want to do through our mindfulness practice is start to bring awareness to these judgments that are stopping us from accepting ourselves, how we are now here in this present moment. The next stage after self-acceptance is actually self-kindness, so being kind to ourselves. If we take an example in a dating environment, if we've been out on a date, for example, and the person that we went on the first date with, we had high hopes that we would end up going on a second date with them, but they disappoint us. They don't want to see us again. So often what we would do, the harsh inner critic would come in these situations and would berate us. You've done it again, you've blown it, you were too eager. I knew you should have wore your hair down. You shouldn't have worn those shoes. So we have the inner critic who's criticizing us and making us feel bad in a moment of discomfort and stress. When we're dealing with difficult situations, we could call this suffering. So in these moments of suffering, through our mindfulness practice, what we start to learn to do is take a kinder tone towards ourselves, recognizing the inner critic when it arises, shining a light on the inner critic, knowing that often what the inner critic has to say is not true. It's not something that you need to believe, although at the time it feels like the truth, and it makes us feel bad. It makes us feel even worse. So through our mindfulness practice and through the exercises that will follow this lesson, what we're going to start to do is start to draw attention to the inner critic, start to pay attention to the things that we say to ourselves. And through this awareness of the inner critic, we can start to learn to take a kinder tone with ourselves. We can start to become our own best friend. It's much easier to support a friend in a difficult situation. If a friend came to you and they'd had a bad date, what's the types of things that you would say to them? You would encourage them. You would console them. And that's what we're going to learn to do for ourselves. We're going to learn to become our own best friends. And the first step in doing that is growing awareness of our self-talk. And also, as we said earlier, learning to accept ourselves.